Yo, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Smeezy MMA, and today we're talking about every single fight the UFC should make after UFC 330. UFC 330 just took place. We saw Islam Makhachev beat Ian Gary, and without further ado, let's get into the first fight that we are going to be booking, and it's Islam versus Carlos Prates. I can understand why you think Michael Morales kind of deserves it. I went with Carlos Prates simply because I think that's what the UFC is going to do. There's a reason why he literally had it printed on his shirt, and it said, "I'm next." Carlos Prates is more promotable. Even if you think the fact that he lost to Ian Gary should be a big blemish, the reality is he's more promotable than a Michael Morales, has a bigger fan base, has great power, and on paper, this sells more pay-per-views. I guess pay-per-view is not a thing anymore. More numbers for a numbered event. You know, it's going to do the numbers. All right? Breaking down Islam Makhachev's performance against Ian Gary, he looked beatable. He didn't look that great, but the reality is I think Ian Gary is the toughest test for him in the welterweight division. So as much as I kind of want to see Islam get upset, and I will be cheering for Carlos Prates, and I will be cheering for Michael Morales over him, I was cheering for him tonight. I honestly do think that was the toughest matchup in the division for him, right? I still think that outside of this, outside of Ian Gary in the future, the toughest matchup for him, I know people are going to like me saying this just because of the timing of things, I still think it's Ilia Topuria. That might be a hot take. I don't give a fuck. Chew me out about it. Yeah, sure, Islam probably still wins, but he didn't look that good tonight. He really didn't. I don't think Ian Gary really landed anything that makes me think Carlos Prates is going to land that big shot on Islam. And not only that, you saw in Carlos Prates' last fight where he got taken down, where he got controlled, he got put in bad positions by Leon Edwards, and that's Leon Edwards. That's not Islam Makhachev. So as I don't want to say lackluster as that performance was from Islam Makhachev, because Ian Gary is damn good. That's the reality of the situation. As lackluster as that fight feels, I still believe that Islam Makhachev will beat the rest of the welterweight division. I think that Michael Morales might have a better chance than Carlos Prates, but I still think that Islam's better than Michael Morales. I still think Michael Morales overextends on his punches, overextends on combinations, which will make it easy for Islam Makhachev to find takedowns. And after a round or two of Islam Makhachev top control pressure, I don't think Michael Morales is going to be able to come out there and showcase stellar cardio. Even though he's been 3 rounds, he hasn't been 3 rounds maybe at a fast pace or while getting controlled, taking down whatever it might be. So I think that Michael Morales maybe has a second best chance within this division, but we will see. I think this is what the UFC is booking. Therefore, it is what I am booking. So let's move on to the next fight that we will be booking for Ian Gary. And it's versus the winner of Bonfim versus Brady. We just saw on the broadcast that that fight was booked. And now that I'm making this video, I'm kind of second guessing it because in my head, what I was thinking the UFC is going to do is one of these logjam situations where they put Morales as the backup fighter, right? They already promised a title shot to Carlos Prates, but it also kind of seems like they talked to Morales like he kind of deserves a title shot too. It almost seems like it was kind of promised at that time that Morales was going to be the guy looking for the title shot. And we're kind of at this situation. Ian Gary's coming off of a loss. Outside of the 2 main guys in Morales and Prates, we don't necessarily have anyone else that's going to be fighting for the title soon, unless Bonfim versus Brady, the winner of that wins. Let's say it's Bonfim, who's on a good streak where he beat Sean Brady, where he beat I can't fucking talk right now. Why can I not think? Let's say, yeah, that's where he beat Bilal and Brady back to back. I think at that point, for me, I think that you would do Bonfim versus Michael Morales. But I also think that the UFC might do one of these situations where if Sean Brady wins and we get Brady versus Ian Gary, I think the winner of that would still be a fight away from the title. And then we could be looking at a situation where Michael Morales fights Islam Makhachev. So why I put Bonfim versus Brady is kind of just dependent on who wins, how it all plays out. If Bonfim wins, there's a very real claim to the title. And at that point, you do Bonfim versus Michael Morales for a title elimination bout. So I guess this is kind of just what I put. You got to let the division play out a little bit. Like maybe you could do JDM, but at that point, I don't know. You want to get JDM some more momentum. That'd be a tough test for JDM at this point. Let my boy chill a little bit. So yeah, I don't know. Ian Gary's good. Like I said, you heard my respect for him when we were talking about Islam Makhachev when he was on screen. So welterweight's kind of interesting. What I honestly think will happen is we're either going to get Michael Morales, like a kind of Manel Kopp situation where we're like, all right, we got to wait for Van versus Pantoja to happen, and then Manel Kopp, then you're good, right? We got to wait for Prates versus Islam, and then Morales, you're good. That's if Brady wins. If Bonfim wins, it could shake up the division, like I said. So kind of just depends. This isn't me saying that I think Brady will win. Just like I don't think they're going to do Ian Gary versus Michael Morales, because if Ian Gary wins, now you're kind of in that situation where if Bonfim wins and he gets a title shot, I don't know. I think that they might just let him be inactive. I would like it to be active. That'd be cool. But, I mean, time will tell. We'll see on that part. So spent a little bit too much time on that. Sorry. There's one other thing I wanted to hammer home. One other thing I wanted to say. I think I'm missing it right now. Yeah, I guess that's kind of just it. The one thing that kind of concerns me of like how this is going to play out is just Islam can be inactive So, I mean, take this with a grain of salt. So, anyways, yeah, that was the fight breakdown. Is there anything else I want to mention about that fight? I gave it 48-47. I did think that Ian Gary won round 4. I think that Islam was just controlling, not doing much damage. Pretty boring fight outside of the fact that Islam landed that head kick. He definitely is high level. Everyone has respect on his technical abilities at this point, but that wasn't some world breaker fucking performance. And I think he's either the GOAT or very close to being the GOAT. A close fight with Ian Gary, you would like to see him be a little bit more active, try to work in a little bit more damage. Like round 4, he had a lot of control. He had the slamming takedown, but Ian Gary edged him out on the feet and did more damage in the clinch. And he should not be winning that round. Like just with the way I was playing. Anyways, whatever. So I know some people think Islam won that fight. Or not, he did win that fight. That's not what I'm arguing. Won round 4 just because of control, whatever. I would argue Ian Gary won that. And if you go from the beginning of round 4 and you look at Islam's face at the end of round 4, going into round 5, I think you got to go with Ian Gary round 4. Regardless, he looked good. He is a high-level fighter. I'm not a big fan of Ian Gary. I was cheering for Islam Makhachev, to be frank with you, because I'm not a real big fan of Ian Gary's personality, but I can respect how damn good this guy is. He was a good underdog. And there was a point, man, after he won round 3, I'm like, this fucking vegan bastard is about to be my champion, isn't he? And thankfully, he's not. So, yeah, there you go. All right, let's move on to the next fight that I booked. And Jalen Turner versus Esteban Ribovic. All right, hear me out. I know everyone wants Jalen Turner versus Manuel Torres, and I think that's a good matchup. And that is probably a matchup where you're going to get a guaranteed finish within a minute. This matchup is a little bit more interesting going into it, right? When I'm making matchups, when I'm booking these matchups for the UFC, man, I'm thinking about, number one, matchups that will be fun stylistically, where we can learn more about each opponent, or will just be bangers, or also in the sense like momentum-wise, we get to build up one of these guys. It makes sense for the UFC to do this fight. Going into it, too, it's going to be a really, really hyped-up fight, I think. Like, this is kind of the matchup where you get some backers on Twitter saying this. You get a pretty split breakdown. Some people really confident on one side, some people very confident on the other, or people just split down the middle and saying both these guys are so much fun to watch. This is a banger. I think consensus going into this fight, a lot of people would be excited for this one, right? There was something else I kind of wanted to say here. Tired, man. I'm tired. It's late at night over here. Like, you can go a lot of ways with Jalen Turner when it comes to matchmaking, and same thing with Esteban Ribovic. I honestly just think this is the type of fight that you throw on the main card of a pay-per-view, open it up, and you know it's going to be a banger. You know there's going to be hype around it. This is kind of if you're going to put an unranked fight on a pay-per-view, this is the type of shit you go. You know Esteban Ribovic brings the volume. He will get into war. He does not have any boring fights, man. This guy is a scrapper, throws slobber knocker hooks, but more importantly, a lot of volume and very fun combinations. Very, very tough. Right? Jalen Turner is a guy with great one-shot KO power. He knocks out Cowley Fernandez, looks very good in that matchup and smokes him. I picked him by round 1 KO. He gets it done by round 1 KO. Now, I will tell you, for some reason, when they touched gloves, I was just feeling that Cowley Fernandez was going to win that fight. Right? The line movement was getting to my head. Cowley walked out all confident. Jalen was like, he was calm, composed, and like, he is. He's a little bit of like a quiet guy. But I was thinking, man, dude, one calf kick landed from Cowley Fernandez. I'm like, oh shit, man, this fight's over. And then Jalen goes out there and smokes him. He has unreal power. We know Esteban is hittable, but he's extremely tough. In my opinion, this is either going to be a certified hood classic or a matchup that propels Jalen Turner's potential in the future. I know both these guys are good prospects, but every once in a while, you got to do prospect versus prospect matchups. And are they really that good of prospects? We're like looking at two 31-year-olds, maybe a 31 and a 30-year-old here. This is a banger fight. Everyone would be talking about it fight week. I don't think anyone would have bad things to say. And you could get two really sick individual matchups by booking these two guys against different opponents and the right opponents as well. I just think timing-wise, this makes sense. Why not do it, man? They both didn't take much damage. They both smoked Edson Barboza. I think this fight makes sense. I think it's fun. So, yeah. Next fight of the card. Mike Davis versus Cowley Fernandez. Okay. Cowley Fernandez, another guy you can go a lot of ways with. I do think that at this point, we've seen him crush cans. We know he can beat the Harry Hardwicks, the Muhammad Yahya's, and yes, he beat Gutadaledze, which is a very good win. Right? I know people think Guram sucks. Guram is not like a horrible fighter, but he's not high level. And we've seen that Cowley Fernandez can run through cans. We've seen the same thing with Mike Davis. They both put on fun fights, and it feels like these are the kind of guys that the hardcore fans or the MMA community, we're always talking about like, oh, dude, they really could put together. They're good prospects. If they put it together, man, they really could be good. I know Cowley just got smoked. Mike Davis just lost to Nurul Aliyev. This makes sense timing-wise because Mike Davis isn't really the most active guy. If you know, you know. This guy fights once a year. There's like once every year we get a fucking Apex card and, oh shit, Mike Davis showed up. You know what I mean? That kind of situation. He said he wants to stay more active. So knowing Mike Davis, that's probably once every 5 months, once every 6 months. Timing-wise, it just kind of makes sense. Stylistically, I think this would be a fun matchup. You would propel one of them forward with good momentum. The one that loses, then you can give them a Candy Crush and they'll be back in the mix, to be frank with you. I think this is a cool, interesting matchup. Cowie, as much as I love him, right, at the age of 31 years old, do you really need to build him up to be this great lightweight prospect? No, he just got knocked out by Jalen Turner. Let's put up a matchup that's fun on paper, should be fun stylistically, and you could throw it on any fight night card, and people are going to be pretty excited for it. So I think stylistically, it's fun. It should be a cool matchup, and you'll probably learn a decent bit about both fighters, about their levels. And not only is it a fun matchup, I think stylistically and prediction-wise, it's just an interesting matchup. So that's my pick there. I think there's a lot of ways you can go with Cowie Fernandez. I just settled with Mike Davis. It makes sense timing-wise. It makes sense ranking-wise. Boom. Next fight. Chidi Njokuani versus Jeff Neal. This was already booked. I think they're going to rebook it. I think it makes more sense now. Yeah, it was a little bit of a dull fight, but I think it's more on Joel Alvarez than Chidi Njokuani. And I am fucking pissed at myself. So fucking pissed at myself for not picking Chidi Njokuani. He was my original pick. Like, whenever you're just kind of like thinking through things. Before I watch tape, I like to look at every matchup. I fuck it. Reflect on it. And I was going to be picking Chidi Njokuani. I'm like, dude, Joel Alvarez, he plods forward. I know the tape's not that impressive because I was watching some Joel Alvarez tape a lot going into his last fight for whatever reason. I felt like I had a pretty good... What the fuck is the word here, bud? I had a pretty good guess, a pretty good comprehension of Joel Alvarez's striking ability on the feet. And I thought that he would struggle against a guy with a bigger frame like Chidi. I thought Chidi was the more technical striker. I thought Chidi was going to eat him apart from the kicking range, right? And I don't think this was necessarily a hot take, but I thought that Chidi Njokuani was going to be the guy that could potentially knock him out, and I bet him by KO. That didn't end up playing out the way that I expected it to, and Chidi just won from range. But I think that's because Joel Alvarez fought retardedly, dude. The reason why I picked Joel Alvarez was because I thought this dude was going to pressure forward and turn this into somewhat of a war. I love Chidi. I'm a big fan of Chidi. I'm really pissed at myself I didn't fucking pick him. And I wanted to pick him in this matchup, but I watched Joel Alvarez tape back. I'm like, all right, when this dude pressures, he's got good combinations. Chidi Njokuani does struggle with guys that will pressure forward, that are threatening with the power. And he does seem to get pressured by a lot of people eventually over time. Joel Alvarez with the bigger frame, with the power, with a longer extended combination, should be able to pressure and find something up against a cage. And even when Chidi Njokuani goes to war, this guy ends up losing. As much as I hate to say it, I sat there during the Mikhail Jacek fight, hyping up Chidi, picking Chidi, part of the Bang Bang family, and he hurts him twice, has him on fucking skates, and then adversity hits him in the face and he fucking plateaus. Gregory Rodriguez, dude, he was beating his ass. In between rounds. You see a cut on Gregory Rodriguez's forehead, and you're literally looking into his brain. That's how deep the fucking cut is. And then Njokuani slows down and breaks. Okay? Joel Alvarez to me looked like a guy with a good chin. I know we're not here to just talk about my predictions and how the fight went, but I thought Joel Alvarez was going to get kind of touched up a little bit by the kicks from Chidi Njokuani, and then he'd be forced to kind of close the distance, trade, throw combinations, look to get him out of there early, turn it into more of a war, and I thought that he would win a war. He didn't want to engage in a war. He wanted to engage in the one spot Chidi Njokuani was almost guaranteed to win the fucking fight. A technical Muay Thai striking fight, low volume. What the fuck, man? Bullshit. I'm happy Chidi won for the record, by the way. I'm just pissed I didn't pick him. And I'm pissed that I bet him by KO and I didn't sprinkle his money line. I was going to sprinkle his money line and a little bit by KO, but I was like, all right, realistically, if Chidi is going to win this fight, it could be by decision, but it's probably going to be a war type of scenario. And I was not expecting Joel Alvarez to just completely play into his game. I love Chidi. Once again, I've said that like 5 times. My bad, guys. Fuck, dude. I don't know. I didn't think it would be purely by KO. I guess that's a bad take. I think the reason why I only played KO is because it was plus 550. And just from what made sense in my head, with Joel Alvarez being a smart guy, watching the tape, seeing what you've seen with Chidi Njokuani, would get touched up a little bit from range, struggle a little bit, plod forward a little bit, and then really try to find the KO, pressure forward, find combinations up against a cage against Chidi Njokuani. And then that's a situation where I thought either Njokuani could find a KO or Alvarez could find a KO. Which is why I picked Alvarez, but I thought Njokuani plus 550 was crazy. So I'm talking way too much about this fucking fight. I'm sorry, guys. I think they'd rebook this matchup. I think it makes sense. I think it's fun to watch. So I'm going to start moving through this a little bit faster right after I get through another rant about Joel Alvarez. Versus Ty Miller or Chris Curtis. I don't like Joel Alvarez. What I will say, he's still fun to watch. I do think that a matchup against Ty Miller would be very interesting. Not interesting. I think Ty Miller would smoke him. I'm very confident Ty Miller would smoke him. And I'm happy that Joel Alvarez finally got fraud checked because Joel Alvarez fans pissed me the fuck off, man. Pissed me the fuck off. And like I was saying, he's not that good of a striker. And I swear, there's a certain backing of Joel Alvarez among MMA Twitter, among these fans. And I'm not saying it was on my video because shit, I got 10 subscribers. Make sure to like and subscribe. So I didn't really get any heat for saying that he was a bad striker, that Inji Kwani had a good chance. But just seeing the shit on Twitter that people say about Joel Alvarez, I'm happy that he fucking lost, because I don't think he's ever been that good when it comes to striking. He's been a little bit of a frame bully, frame mogger, whatever the fuck you want to say. Let's give him an interesting matchup in Ty Miller. Not an interesting matchup. Let's give Ty Miller interesting matchup where he's probably going to win, right? We could learn some things. Like Joel Alvarez still does have good power. He still has tools to give Njokuani a tough fight, in my opinion, if he has the right game plan. But Ty Miller's much better from range. I think Ty Miller boxes his head off and has a sick performance. So if you want to throw him on a fight night main card, that would be a sick matchup. And people would say, oh, well, Joel Alvarez, full camp this time. He's going to look much different. He's got a great submission game. The reality is Joel Alvarez has horrible fucking takedown entries. He does not land takedowns. He does not shoot takedowns because he's not going to get them. And when he's submitting people, it goes to the ground. A lot of times from his striking, hurting someone, and then it taking place on the ground because the opponent shoots a takedown, or it's a weird exchange where he latches up a submission in that process, or something along the lines of like his opponent shooting a takedown for whatever reason. So be it. He's fun to watch. I think him versus Chris Curtis would be a really sick fight if you don't want to do the situation where you're just kind of obliterating Joel Alvarez's hype. I know Ty Miller would beat him. Ty Miller would box his fucking head off. That would be a sick performance. You could even put that on the main card of like a pay-per-view in terms of an opener. I do think you can put unranked fights on main cards of numbered events. That's my hot take. It just has to be good matchmaking. It has to be good talent. Ty Miller is good talent. Joel Alvarez still is a good talent. Still has a decent bit of hype on his name. I know he lost to Inji Kwani, but like people would be saying, dude, he's a live dog. Why is he plus 300? And then everyone's going to be betting him. So I've had my Joel Alvarez rant. I do think he's a cool guy. I was probably a fan of him before you were a fan of him, just to say that much. It's just the fucking Joel Alvarez fans that were overrating the fuck out of him made me switch up on him a little bit, okay? But anyways, the Chris Curtis fight, that'd be a banger, dude. That'd be a banger. And I know fucking bangers, bud. I do think that would be a very, very fun fight to watch. So if you're not going to go the Ty Miller route, you're not going to build up a guy like Ty Miller. I just think that makes sense timing-wise. If you're not going to do that, Chris Curtis is probably looking for a fight. Get him in there. Charles Johnson looked good against Eduardo Chapelin. Kind of. He got dropped. I bet Eduardo Chapelin by KO plus 550. What a good fucking bet, man. It doesn't hit. It misses. It's okay, though. All right. It's all right. I picked Charles Johnson. I wasn't trusting Eduardo Chapelin on short notice. I said that he's very good. I still stand on that. He's got a lot of good tools, switch stance, good kicks, good power, decent from range. Yes, he's a little bit small for the division. Actually, maybe not small because he's probably normal size for the division. Maybe slightly undersized. He just looks a lot smaller compared to Charles Johnson. But Charles Johnson's a lot to deal with on short notice, who has great cardio, long guy, decent bit of power, tricky, good submission game. That was a great submission that he found in round 3. Really, really impressive stuff. Kind of interesting because this guy, he got Sulev stretched last fight by Asiel Mabayev. And now he comes out here, he gets a fucking sick submission. Really crafty work from Charles Johnson. So credit to him. I think we're going to rebook the Jose Ochoa fight. I know people were not really high on this fight because Ochoa was minus 400 and that was their lock of the card. I do not know why people were calling him wash going into that matchup. Right now that he's coming off a win against Eduardo Chapelin after getting dropped, coming back, walking through adversity, I think maybe people will be more excited for this matchup. I'm still excited for this matchup. I was still pretty excited for the matchup going into it. I think Jose Ochoa is a lot of fun to watch. I'm a pretty big fan of Jose Ochoa, but let's not act like this guy wasn't getting touched up a little bit by Cody Durden. Durden was landing some good shots. Touched up was kind of a little bit strong there. Durden had his moments. He wasn't touching up Jose Ochoa, but he had his moments. That's all I'm going to say. And if Durden's having moments, I think Charles Johnson is alive to maybe have some moments as well. I still would pick Jose Ochoa, right? But I think it does make sense to rebook. These are the type of fights that you're going to have Charles Johnson in. We can learn something about Jose Ochoa. Matchmaking-wise, it does make sense. Book it. Why not? What else are you going to do? Like Charles Johnson, I was thinking maybe like a Steve Erceg matchup. Yeah, I'm good. Like this matchup doesn't make sense. Rebook it. Why not? Go for it. All right, Eduardo Chapelin versus Kevin Borjas. I think Kevin Borjas is going to lose his matchup against Ray Saruya. And when he does, I think that this is kind of a good debut. It'll be a fun matchup. On paper, I think Eduardo Chapelin will maybe win a decision. He could struggle with the volume of Kevin Borjas, but I could just see him finding a big shot. This guy has good power. There's a lot of tools I do like about him. He is 30 years old, so this is kind of one of those matchups where you're not going to give him the easiest can of all time. There's a few matchups I kind of considered in Jafel Fieldho, maybe Eduardo Rodriguez. I think Eduardo Lazy Boy Rodriguez is how I know him. Maybe it was Ronaldo Rodriguez. Same shit, whatever. And there was one other guy I was kind of considering. I settled on Kevin Borjas just because I think this is a fun, stylistic matchup. Kevin Borjas had a good performance against Andre Lima. Granted, that was a weird fight, but this is like a good, interesting debut that he could win. Not a debut, but his first full camp debut, I guess, his real debut, where he looked good against Charles Johnson. Damn near KO'd him in round 2. He won in round 1. There was the point deduction, obviously, and then he slowed down in round 3. Took the fight on short notice. On a full camp, I think he could beat a Kevin Borjas. I do think that he is a good addition to the roster. He's a great addition to the flyweight division, making it such a good division. I really do think the flyweight division is probably the best division in the UFC at this point. So matchup-wise, this is interesting. Going into it, it makes sense. Should be fun. Next fight of the card. Deontay Johnson versus Robert Valentin. All right, if you know, you know. Maybe not. I think everybody should know. This is not an if you know, you know. But Deontay Johnson with the great performance. I picked him by round 1 KO. He gets it done by round 1 KO. I bet him by round 1 KO. I made some money. We made 1.75 units, baby. Come on now. That's not that much, but we'll take it. We'll take profit any week. All right. Deontay Johnson has great knockout power. He's fun to watch. He's explosive. Book him against Robert Valentin, who's coming off a win 2 weeks ago. Timing-wise, it makes sense. Robert Valentin does love some violence. Deontay Johnson obviously has some wrestling to his game, so he can choose if this fight is going to be on the feet or on the ground. But on the ground, Robert Valentin has a very good submission game. I think this is kind of one of those fights where you look at Deontay Johnson, 27 years old, pretty decent prospect, and you realize that he has potential, but he's probably not fully there yet, okay? This is a matchup that he should win. This is an interesting matchup on paper. I think it is just interesting matchmaking where you're kind of delaying Deontay Johnson taking on the type of fighters that would fraud check him, really pivot the momentum that he just gained from the McConaughey fight. I think both these fighters could be active. This fight could happen soon. And I think Deontay Johnson would probably get another highlight reel KO, boost his confidence even more. And just going into this matchup, it is decently interesting. I think it just should be a fun stylistic matchup. And now that Deontay Johnson just had a very fun performance against Eric McConaughey, I think there's going to be a lot of people jumping back on the train. And he might be too big of a favorite, minus 400 over Robert Valentin, because this guy did have his performance against Cody Brundage still. We cannot forget that. But I think still, stylistically, this is a banger. Deontay Johnson should win. It does two things. Number one, it gives you a banger stylistic matchup. Number two, it gives you a winnable matchup for Deontay Johnson and slowly builds him up. So there you go. Moving on. Eric McConaughey versus Andre Pulyaev. Obviously, we know he came off the round 1 KO loss. Got flatline, man. I do appreciate Eric McConaughey. I was kind of hating on him when he came into the UFC, but I can respect the fact that he has a place in the UFC. And we can learn things from opponents when Eric McConaughey takes him on, and he has a sneaky craftsman art to his game. I have some appreciation for McConaughey. But in this matchup, I went with Andre Pulyaev. Pulyaev's coming off 2 losses. I think he is kind of a guy the UFC should be looking at giving a lower level guy in the middleweight division, right? Maybe not the easiest layup of all time. And that's kind of McConaughey. I think stylistically, it's interesting. Could it be boring? Yes, 2 longer, rangier technical strikers. It could just be a very boring, kind of point fight. But I think Pulyaev can be fun. Pulyaev can be sneaky with the volume when it is going his way. I think the kicks from range would be kind of interesting. Pulyaev's 28 years old. So even though he's off 2 losses, it is to Nursultan Ruziboyev and Ateba Gautier. I think you got to reward him at some point for taking those matchups, taking the matchups that people don't want to take, and giving him a winnable matchup against a tough customer, man. I think there's a reason why I wasn't super confident in my Deontay Johnson pick. And it's because McConaughey he's a tricky guy, man. He's a tricky guy. So I think this matchup does make sense. I think that you can wait some time before it's booked. Andre Pulyaev might wait another 4 or 5 months down the line. And yeah, dude, it just makes sense. It makes sense. So, I mean, even if McConaughey loses this, he might still have another fight in the UFC, right? So this fight makes sense. It's not McConaughey getting fed to the wolves, right? Makes sense. Why not? All right. Dustin Stoltzfus versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. That's what I booked here. Dustin fraud-checked Mansour Abdul-Malik. And I'm going to say fraud-checked as in a double fraud-checked. He's worse than we thought. And I do think Dustin is underrated. And that was a good performance. He found takedowns, took some good shots, gritty maxed, found big shots, and then ultimately had a better pace, was a tougher guy between him and Mansour. And while he might not be as athletically talented, this guy he finds a way to be crafty and have big moments against good fighters, dude. He dropped Nursultan Ruziboyev. People forget about that. All right, that was a very tricky fight for Nursultan. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk is kind of one of these fighters that has struggled with the takedown defense, but shown improvements recently. Now, he just lost to Abus Magomedov, But Mikhail Jacek, training with Fighting Nerds, has good takedown defense. Not good takedown defense, has shown improved takedown defense, but we don't know how improved. So why not find out? On the feet, this is fun. Mikhail is the better striker. Mikhail is very fun to watch on the feet. Dustin Stoltzfus is hittable, but he's also pretty fun to watch on the feet. I think this is a perfect type of fight. You throw in the apex and you just let him go to war. And if Dustin does find takedowns, I think he probably finds a submission. So stylistically, this is fun. Ranking-wise, this makes sense. I don't think you can give Dustin Stoltzfus a top 15 opponent. I just think this makes sense ranking-wise. I think stylistically it should be fun. Get it booked. Why not? This seems like something the UFC would book. Yeah, good win from Dustin Stoltzfus. But to me, more of it is just being unimpressed with Mansour. That's what I took away from it. So moving on to Mansour Abdul-Malik. We're booking him against Zachary Reese. I think they both are not good. I think Mansour probably would win this fight because I think Zachary Reese is dog shit, and I don't think he really has a place in the UFC at this point. Like, sure, he's a sneaky craftsman. And I kind of did just make the argument for Eric McConaughey. So you could say that about Zachary Reese, but there's something about Zachary Reese that pisses me off. This matchup is like two guys that are fallen prospects. You know what I mean? Mansour should win this. I don't want to see him fight an absolute can. I don't really care to see Zachary Reese fight an absolute can. I know that both of them can beat them. What will they do against each other? I think stylistically this should end in a finish. If it doesn't, it could be very boring and very sloppy. So put it on the early prelims of an Apex card. You know, it could be fun. Maybe Abdul Malik, build his name back up. He is young. He is athletic. He does have good power, but he's just not putting it together. He doesn't seem very tough. Slow down. Striking defense is not all there. I think this is like sneakily winnable on both sides. Now, yeah, I mean, shit, it's interesting how this one would play out. So why not? Kind of makes sense. I mean, this is not a banger, but it makes sense if you're going to book Mansour Abdul-Malik in the UFC again. So there you go. Kyle Dawkins versus Tresean Gore. I was trying to find a matchup for Tresean Gore, and this is what I came up with. Kyle Dawkins coming off a loss against Bo Nickel. Tresean Gore putting together a pretty good two-fight winning streak. You know, Kyle Dawkins is pretty well-rounded. Tresean Gore has pretty decent takedown defense, pretty decent cardio, good power. Both these guys like to trade stylistically on the feet. It should be fun. There could be some grappling. Why not? Why not? Ranking-wise, it makes sense. One of these guys gets some good momentum. The other one coming off another loss, and then you can go from there what you will. I think this just does make sense stylistically. I'm not going to book Tresean Gore against fucking Yusri Belgarui or something like that. Well, Belgarui's booked up. But you're not going to give Tresean Gore like a great opportunity to move up the rankings just because he beat Vicente Luque. You know what I mean? You saw Joel Alvarez beat Vicente Luque, and they gave him Chidi Njokuani. Was short notice, but it's not like Njokuani was this massive climb up for Joel Alvarez. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I think this matchup does make sense. Ranking-wise, kind of right around the level that they're fighting. Stylistically, it should be fun. Going into it, I don't think anyone's really going to be hating on this. Yeah, Gore's got some good momentum. Kyle Dawkins had some very good momentum before the Nickel fight. Fuck it, why not? Should be a fun matchup. Okay, Vicente Luque. Why does he look like fat? He just looks washed in this photo, man. Unfortunate. I'm putting him up against Gilbert Urbina. Yeah, I don't think he really fully has it anymore. Did he look egregiously washed? Like, no. But kind of, you know what I mean? In comparison, what he used to be. Tresean Gore is like decently good to some degree. So, oh well. Luque had some moments where he came back from damage. You know, round 2, he took a lot of damage. Came back from round 3 and did pretty well in that round. Now, I think part of that was because Tresean Gore was laying off the gas. He knew that he won the first 2 rounds, and he was kind of content with where he was at, and he didn't want to gas out. But Luque, while he might not be built for war, did take a decent amount of damage and dealt with it okay. Now, he's not back to prime Luque, but Urbina is a winnable matchup. It's also a losable matchup. I think this is kind of around the level of opponent the UFC should be booking Luque against. And stylistically, it's just fun. This is another one of those fights you put on the prelims, and like betting-wise, there's going to be some fun angles. There's going to be some fun takes on this fight going into the prediction week. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I think it's interesting. Stylistically, should be fun. Why not book it? I like Luque. Wasn't super impressed with his performance. I bet Tresean Gore. I bet Tresean Gore by KO and submission. Neither one hit. Round 2, man. Fuck, we were close. All good, though. Still won money on the card. Like I said, we won 1.75 units. Stay tuned. Dana White's Contender Series Week 2 coming out pretty soon. Hopefully tomorrow, as well as UFC Sacramento. Another good card. All right. Like this guy a lot. Fernando. His performance today made me forget that he got taken down by Almeida. All right. I'll just tell you that right now. We're booking him against Billy Elicana. I think this is 2 fun strikers from range. Fernando's a guy that's pretty high volume from range, so this should be a fun fight. I think he would beat Billy Elicana, but Elicana has some sneaky grappling to his game, is a sneaky craftsman, does have a good body kick. I think stylistically this is intriguing, while you're also likely building up Fernando. So stylistically, this is good. Elicana has some good momentum. I think the winner of this fight should get a good look up into the rankings. So Fernando, I really liked your performance, but part of the problem was you were fighting Rafael Tobias, who is really bad. He just looked horrible. And I was kind of high on his chances going into this fight because I was worried about the Fernando takedown defense. And to be fair, he hasn't disproven that fully because the takedown shots from Tobias were just pretty egregious. But, I mean, he did all the right things when it came to his takedown defense. You know what I mean? Like, I fucking like this guy striking. I like what he does when he's on the feet. I like what he's about. I'm a fan of this dude. I'm buying some stock in this kid. And I think he would beat Billy Alicana. But it's an interesting matchup on paper, I do think. For those who know. Let's move on to Rafael Tobias. All right. He's 23 years old, so we could cut him. We could give him a matchup against like a Luke Fernandez or someone lower level like that. That would probably still come out and knock this guy out, right? He was tough. He did take shots pretty well, but still, I don't know. We'll see. So I'm making this matchup because I think it does right by both fighters. Rafael Tobias at the age of 23 years old. If he beats Brenton Hilario, he probably should be in the UFC. If he loses, he should not be in the UFC. And if he gets cut, he gets cut because the reality is he's 23 years old. If he's good enough to be in the UFC, he will find his way back into the UFC before he reaches his athletic prime. So there's that for you. Brenton Hilario has literally been booked against killer after killer after killer. He's been a huge underdog in all of his matchups. I don't know if he's been favored once in the UFC since he's been signed. This is a matchup that I think he could win. Very winnable matchup. He's on a 4-fight losing streak. If he wins this, he stays in the UFC. If he loses, he goes home. This is a winner go home type of situation for both of these fighters. And to me, stylistically, this should be fun. It's kind of an intriguing matchup on paper. You know, Ribeiro has holes when it comes to his grappling, when it comes to his submission events, right? He's been hit on the feet before. Tobias has good power. I think this is sneaky, a banger of a stylistic matchup. Just an interesting one you see on the prelims. You're like, all right, you know what? Maybe the Apex isn't that bad. Maybe it's not that bad, okay? But yeah, so I think this does right by both fighters. It makes sense. Book it. Cool. Bang. All right. Neil Magny, man. Craftsman, he gets it done. We had Neil Magny money line. We bet over Brahimaj. Kaboom, buddy. Kaboom. We're at this kind of point with Neil Magny where we know we're not going to think he's going on a title run. We book him against prospects. We put the prospects in good spots, and they tend to beat him. Okay? Jean-Paul Labos-Noyani had a good performance against Seokyoung Ko. And he looks like a good prospect. He's very promotable. Does a lot of work with Jaden Cable. The UFC seems to be putting a lot of promotion into Jean-Paul Labos-Noyani. As I said, he's very promotable. Promotable guys seem to beat the Neil Magnys of the world, okay? I do think that Neil Magny at this point is a pretty recognized name. If you put Jean-Paul Labos-Noyani on the prelims of a good numbered event or the main card of a fight night in person, while it could be a little bit of a boring fight, I do think that Jean-Paul should be able to pull this one off. It is interesting. Neil Magny does have a bit of a chance. This is not just blowout matchmaking because, Neil Magny is a sneaky craftsman, but I think Jean-Paul is much better than Ramiz Brahimaj. He's got better cardio. He's got better striking, maybe better jiu-jitsu, maybe better wrestling. Ramiz is a pretty decent wrestler. Ramiz is still a good fighter. It's hard to know how good he is because you can just look at the low-level moments once he is gassed out. So Neil Magny gets the KO round 2 in the most Neil Magny fashion possible. I was looking at that fight going into it, and I was thinking, dude, this is just a Neil Magny fight. I'm due to pick Neil Magny. I picked him. I bet him. I liked him in that matchup. I'm very happy that I picked Neil Magny because I almost did it. Earlier in the week, I was picking Ramiz, right? Earlier in the week, I watched a tape. It spoke to me, man. But Jean-Paul, I think this is an interesting matchup. Pretty crafty matchup. Builds up Jean-Paul. It's a jump up for Jean-Paul. But you can argue that Seokyoung Ko is a tougher matchup or just an overall tougher fighter than a Neil Magny. But still, I think rankings-wise, in terms of experience, this is a good matchup, a good fight to have under the belt of a Jean-Paul. So, makes sense. Next fight. Owen Elliott versus Ramiz Brahimaj. This might be a win-or-go-home situation for both of them. I know Ramiz can smoke low-level opponents, but at this point, it doesn't seem like he's going to have a place in the UFC if that's all that he can do, right? He's now 31, 32, 33 years old, somewhere in that range. And he gasses out after 6 minutes of fighting every single time if he doesn't find the finish early. I bet him against Vanderford on the money line and by finish, and he cashed me a lot of money, and I'm very, very thankful to him for that. But the reality is, I don't think he's that good. Owen Elliott is a guy that has beaten the cans, similar to Brahimaj. So let's figure out between these two guys who deserves to stay in the UFC, if not, who is just overall higher level. And if we can learn something about both these guys. Like I said, I don't think Owen Elliott deserves to get cut, especially not after taking a fight against Michael Oliveira and getting KO'd. That kid's just a killer, all right? Owen Elliott, I think, probably would win this fight, ironically enough. Ramiz is good. He is dangerous, and he has a good chance in this fight. But like stylistically, interesting fight. Ranking wise, makes sense. I think it's not doing either fighter wrong. So I mean, going into this matchup, I think it'd be an interesting prediction. I'd probably lean towards Open Elliott just off the top of my brain, but I might be recency biased. So there you go. Next fight. All right, last one. This is the last one, and then we got to go. Charles Radke versus Mirbek Orolbai. All right, Orolbai loses to Jeremiah Wells. If they rematch, I mean, Orolbai probably wins, but I said that his striking wasn't that good. Wasn't expecting him to get clipped and then get choked out, right? A ninja choke, man. A ninja choke from Jeremiah Wells. Come on now. Good on Jeremiah Wells for winning and retiring. That's a great way to retire. Congratulations, brother. Enjoy retirement. That was fucking sick. I was actually like really, really excited when that happened. I was like, holy shit, this is fucking sick. You know those moments where you're just like, what the fuck? That was a bigger what the fuck moment than I was expecting. So shout out to you, Dana White, because he sells what the fuck moments for a living, all right? Mirbek Orolbai, he still is a good prospect. We still have the striking concerns. This is kind of an interesting matchup where we know Charles Radke has grappling to his game, has some pretty solid takedown defense, some good offensive grappling of his own, and he has good power, so he has the potential fluke ability if Mirbek Orolbai is not having his way in the grappling. So to me, this fight makes sense. Orolbai will be a big favorite, but it's not like you can book him up against the top 15. You can't give him a jump up in competition. He just lost to Jeremiah Wells. You know what I mean? So there you go. That's been the video. That has been the video. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. We're going to have some fun content coming out this week. We have Dana White's Contender Series Week 2 predictions dropping soon. Maybe not soon. I got to work on it. I got to get in the lab. I've done some of the research. I'm actually going in person to that. I'm really, really excited. I'll make sure to let you guys know how that goes. I'm going to have another video coming out about a Dana White's Contender Series guide for the rest of the season. From week 2 to week 10, just going over the best prospects, week by week, what to see, what to look into. I got you covered on that regard. So that'll be a fun video. And then we got the UFC Fight Night Sacramento full card predictions and breakdown. It's going to be a fun week. Let me know if there's any other videos you guys want me to look into, potentially break down. I might make a video on like sneaky prospects, not the best prospect, not the most obvious prospect of the welterweight division. Everyone's hyping up Michael Oliveira, but maybe the sneaky one, not the under the radar, but like the sneaky best. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a fried video idea. I don't know. Give me ideas. Let me know what you guys want to see. I got 10 subscribers. You could help me have some more. So go ahead and give that video a like and give it a subscription. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Yeah. Follow me on Twitter as well, baby. We're making bread. Let's go right here. You can see Smeezy MMA. This is the last thing I will say. Smeezy MMA. As you can see right here, we end the day positive 1.75 units, 5.46 units on the week. We bet Tom Pagliarulo and Joe Cropshot last week. So we end up 5.46 units last week. And then when we posted a betting card, the last time we posted a betting card before today was at UFC Serbia, we won 9.74 units. So we're a little bit sharp over here. At least recently, we have been sharp. So, hey, show the kids some love. Follow the Twitter, man. Make sure to have a good day. Take care, brothers. Peace.